Hello, my name is Steve Jameson. Some people know me by my painting name that I do my spiritual artwork under the name of Wodin. Um, Tonight, I would like to tell some stories of some old timers who lived here in Myrtle Beach before my spiritual master, Mayor Baba, ever came here. And people who were part of this community not because of coming here to live near his spiritual center. There's one person in particular I'm going to be speaking about. He's the Myrtle Beach photographer. I won't be using his name to protect his privacy. He is still living, and part of the story that I'll be telling you, he was very private and secretive in telling me. So I won't be using his name. I'll try not to use his name. And then a few other characters that I would like to talk about. First, I will say as a background that I love Myrtle Beach and the South Carolina coast. I love it so much I can't even explain it. I first visited here when I was 22 in 1975, when I first was hearing about Mayor Baba. Then I lived here for 1 year in 1976, summer of 76, I guess, 77. Then I went back to Kentucky because it was a little bit slow here in the wintertime. And 5 years later, I moved back to Myrtle Beach in 1982. I especially loved Old Myrtle Beach. I'm very sad to see Myrtle Beach growing. From what I've heard, it's the third fastest growing municipality in the United States, with Las Vegas being number 1 and Dallas being number 2, and then Myrtle Beach. I'm actually horrified by it. All the beautiful places that I spent so many years exploring, all the salt marshes, the islands, they're all being built over with very high density developments and shopping plazas. It's really hideous. Mayor Baba warned us that Myrtle Beach would become a very large city because so many souls would be attracted to live here because of his presence here. They wouldn't know why, they would just feel drawn to live here. So here where it's happening. But I feel sometimes my love for Myrtle Beach is so deep that it might be rooted in past lives here. I feel that I was a Native American Indian chief south of Myrtle Beach near Georgetown on the way to Charleston. And I have evidence that's happened in my life that seems to prove to me somewhat that that may be true. I even owned 3 acres oceanfront property at one time near a Indian mound where I feel I was buried in that lifetime as a chief of a Native American tribe. Then I also have a past life memory of being a black slave on a plantation near a famous sculpture garden south of here, Brook Green Gardens. I was on a plantation on the Waccamaw River there. I was my owner's favorite slave. I was clever. I wasn't stupid. I made the best of my life. And I actually feel it was one of my happiest most fulfilling, satisfying, content incarnations. I know who my master was. His son is highly involved in the Meher Baba community, and he himself has been to Meher Baba's tomb in his lifetime. And when I was first starting my sign business, he was a figure who helped me get started financially. So I was his favorite when I was the black slave. And I wasn't a field laborer. I remember being older, and I would get all my master's hand-me-down clothes once they had holes in them and they were worn out. So I had very nice clothes from him. And what I liked about that incarnation, I didn't have any car insurance payments to make. There was no pollution. There was no current political upheaval. There was no worries about paying any bills. I had a very pleasant rural life among nature, birds, beautiful, beautiful nature. And most of the people on our plantation were happy. The field laborers were happy people. We sang around the campfires at night. It was romantic. It was so wonderful. Then I have a feeling that I also lived here as a white man I was born in 53 in Kentucky, so it would have to be right before that. It feels like the 50s. So maybe it was the 40s when I was here. I feel that I knew Elizabeth Patterson and who helped her, Narina Machabelli, when Meher Baba sent them here to build the Meher Baba Center. I feel that I knew Elizabeth in that time, and I may have somehow had something to do with help in some way that ended up being the Meher Baba Spiritual Center. I loved old downtown Myrtle Beach. I loved all the old timers there. It was a small community. It was a very special community, a lot of heart. It's a relaxing place to live. It's tourists here all year round, a vacation town. And when it was small and almost everyone knew each other, it was very, very charming. It's very sad to say all that's gone. That's all gone now. Hardly any of it left. I still paint old Myrtle Beach cottages on the beach, but almost as soon as I paint one, somebody tears it down and puts up some modern monstrosity. So that's background setting for my love for Myrtle Beach. Let's see, I'm reading my notes here. I first came to visit Myrtle Beach in the spring of 1975. It was my 22nd birthday. I came with five of us in a Volkswagen Beetle from Kentucky to visit the Meher Spiritual Center. I didn't hardly know anything about Meher Baba at the time. I mostly wanted to see the ocean for the first time. But it was during that visit that I had dreams and visions of Meher Baba that caused me to believe that he is the avatar, the reincarnation of Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, Muhammad, and to have a lot of love for him. But the interesting tidbit about first coming here was that before we even went to the Meher Baba Center, before we went anywhere to buy food for the week, one of my companions wanted to stop at a flower shop to buy roses for an old lady that she knew in the community. And I went in the flower shop. I remember the two older ladies behind the counter. I remember the layout of the shop and buying the roses. I remember the front counter. And many years later, I ended up living in Myrtle Beach, and I have a sign business in that building. I didn't plan any of it. I never dreamt that I would believe in Meher Baba. I never dreamt that I would move to Myrtle Beach. I actually had rented another building down the street. After a few months, my landlord tore my building down. I had to move quickly. This building came open at the last minute. I moved in. And so it feels like destiny that I have been in that building for 39 years now. And I love it there. I feel so much at home there. I really, really love my art studio there. And I got to be really good friends with the old lady who had owned the flower shop. One was still living, and she lived in the house behind the shop. And she had had one leg amputated and was in a wheelchair, so she was pretty much housebound. So I got to be friends with her, ran errands for her, changed light bulbs in the ceiling for her. She cooked meals for me, and she seemed to be very fond of me. And for many years, I never did let her know that I was a follower of Meher Baba, because I didn't know what she might think, and I didn't want to lose this wonderful building. But after several years, maybe 10 years or more, one day she was laughing with me, and she said she had guessed it. She figured it out, that I was connected to the Meher Baba community. And then she was very proud to tell me that she knew Elizabeth Patterson, the woman who founded the Center for Meher Baba, and Kitty Davy, Elizabeth's assistant. She was one of Meher Baba's close Mandali that Baba sent from India. She originally was from England. She lived with Baba in India for several years. Then Baba sent her to Myrtle Beach to help Elizabeth with the spiritual center. And my landlady called, and several people in the community, old timers, called Kitty Davy the Plain Lady, which I thought was a little bit amusing. But Kitty, when she was younger, she didn't look as feminine as some women. And I've seen many photos and movies of her from the 1950s where she would be wearing I think capri shorts that are down below the knee, and a white blouse, and very functional clothing, not much jewelry, not makeup that I noticed, not girly like women were in the 50s. Kitty, some of you might not know, Meher Baba told us that she had been the wife of the Buddha. But this landlady of mine called her the Plain Lady, Elizabeth and the Plain Lady. And she said that she also baked cakes. She loved to bake, always baking and cooking for me. And she had these flower coolers to keep the roses and flowers cool in the refrigerators. So she would keep sandwiches and cakes in there to sell as a supplement her income. And she told me that she made all the Meher Baba birthday cakes for Elizabeth Patterson, made them to order. So whenever Elizabeth would have Thanksgiving, Christmas dinner, Meher Baba's birthday, whatever dinner party she was having, my landlady would cook the entire meal for her. And she did tell me one cute little story about how called up Elizabeth on the phone and said, "Miss Patterson, I hope you don't mind that I don't buy the turkeys at your father's grocery store down in Myrtle Beach at Chapin Groceries. They're just too damn high down there, and I can get them cheaper up here at the Piggly Wiggly." And my landlady was very outspoken. I loved hearing stories of the old timers and how they interrelated with the Mandali of Meher Baba who had moved here. Also, I want to say that I've heard several old timers talk about Elizabeth Patterson, who knew her in the 50s and 60s before the Meher Baba lovers started moving to Myrtle Beach to be around the Baba Center. And whenever the old timers would speak of Elizabeth, you could feel the energy in the room would change. It felt as if they were talking about a very high, prominent queen. There was a tone of reverence, and they would kind of hush their voice, and they all called her Miss Patterson. It was unbelievable how much respect would come out of everyone's voice when they spoke for her. They didn't even have to say anything respectful about her. It was just the way they said her name was quite amazing. I think it was very interesting that Elizabeth every Sunday went to a church down in Myrtle Beach, which is about 20-30 minute drive from the Meher Baba Center, which is on the north end. I'm pretty sure it was the Presbyterian church, but I don't quote me, I'm not 100% sure. I just think it's very interesting that a woman who was spending her life with the current incarnation of Jesus would also be going to a Christian church. But she got a lot of respect from the community by doing that. Let's see, what's next on my list to talk about? One old timer that I'll mention for people who are interested in this area, people who want to know more about the history of this area. I never met this man. I did write him a letter to tell him how much I enjoyed reading his book. His name is Dino Thompson, and he came here from Greece with his family, and they were traveling, I think, from New York City to Florida, maybe Miami, with plans to open an Italian restaurant. I think in the 50s, an Italian restaurant would be much more popular in America than a Greek restaurant, which is why they would have an Italian restaurant instead of Greek, I guess. So they stopped in Myrtle Beach on the way because there was no interstate. They had to come through the little 2-lane road here. And they stopped at a diner for lunch, and they never left. They ended up buying the diner. The diner happened to be for sale. There was an apartment upstairs. They moved into the apartment and never left. And I think he was about 5 years old at the time. So he grew up in downtown Myrtle Beach when it was very, very small town, and saw the history of it growing, and seemed to be a little bit of a mischievous boy and had the run of the town. Kids had more freedom back then to run around without being in danger. And he wrote a book about it called Greek Boy Growing Up Southern. You can purchase it on Amazon Books, and you can probably also purchase it on the bar counter at a restaurant he still owns around 76th Avenue North in Myrtle Beach called Flamingo Grill. One humorous story, he talks about how the South Carolina dance, the shag, first started out in the pavilion at Myrtle Beach. Most shag dancers think that it started in North Myrtle Beach, but that's not the case. It started at the pavilion in Myrtle Beach, and it was kind of a jitterbug type dance. And And the musicians were many of the local black musicians. There was a black neighborhood here in North Myrtle Beach called Atlantic Beach. And there were many black musician bands here at the time. And they would play the music for the white kids that would dance at the pavilion. But the city fathers of Myrtle Beach thought that the shag dance was too vulgar. So they outlawed it. So the bands went up to little bars and places in North Myrtle Beach, and all the teenagers followed them up there so they could go up there and enjoy the music and dance. So that's an interesting historical fact about the history of Myrtle Beach. And then Dino, as an adult, he had the idea to start a pancake house serving only breakfast. And he was part of the Greek community. There was a Greek church. And they all told him, all the Greek people said, "You're crazy. You'll never make money off of just serving breakfast. It can't be done." And he started the first pancake house in Myrtle Beach called Dino's. It's right down the street from my sign shop in North Myrtle Beach. It's still there. He did eventually sell it, and he opened up in Restaurant Row. He opened up a fine dining restaurant called Cagney's, and that was furnished with most of the revolving doors and fixtures from the old Ocean Forest Hotel that was in Myrtle Beach. That's just reminded me of a story I hope I don't forget. It would fit really good in this segment right here, talking about the Ocean Forest Hotel. I better tell that part of the story before I forget. But the funny thing is about Dino's is that now all the Greek families in Myrtle Beach own a Greek restaurant, a pancake house serving only breakfast. Pancake houses all over Myrtle Beach because he was so successful. Now, the interesting story about the Ocean Forest Hotel, that used to attract fairly wealthy people, and there was a racetrack here and the golf courses, I guess in the 40s and 50s, I guess. And there was a theater at the Ocean Forest Hotel, and some fairly famous Broadway actors and actresses performed there. And I think Jane Haynes, who ran the Spiritual Center, Marist Spiritual Center for several years, I think she may have performed there sometimes because she was an actress. And an interesting side note about her is that she was close friends with Marilyn Monroe. She used to talk about being close friends with Marilyn Monroe. I'm straying a long way away from that story. I don't want to forget. These are things that are not in my notes that are popping up to tell you. From what I understand, Jane Haynes was very close friends with Marilyn Monroe when they were both in acting school in Manhattan. And I don't know for sure, but I think they may have been roommates at one point. And I think I heard that Marilyn used to babysit for Jane Haynes to babysit her daughter Wendy, who now greets visitors at the Spiritual Center. I wish I knew that, if that was definitely true. I think I heard that, but now I've said it out in front of everybody. I remember one time when Jane was enjoying her sangria, and we were at an outdoor evening party, and she was on a bit of a rampage about what a beautiful, wonderful person Marilyn Monroe was, and how it was the directors and managers who over-sexualized her in the movies and television shows, and that wasn't how Marilyn was in person at all. And Jane really wanted to defend her on that point. I do remember the story about the Ocean Forest Hotel. So my landlady at the sign shop, she lived in a house behind the sign shop that she was very proud of. It was built in 1964. It was a mid-century modern split level, which was extremely, extremely unusual in Myrtle Beach. And I'm surprised this lady had such a contemporary modern house, because this woman had never gone past 8th grade in education and had had to work hard her whole life. But she said that she was looking through Look or Life magazine and saw the floor plans of the house for Eve Arden, who had a popular women's makeup line at that time. And she was very proud of getting her hands on that floor plan and building her house like that. She was very proud of the terrazza floors, which were very mid-century modern. The staircase and balcony were all black wrought iron, open staircase. Every time I went to visit her, several times a week, and when I was in that house, I kept thinking, this looks like a 1960s cocktail hour house. And when she was younger and had both her legs and her sisters were living, I understand they had lots of social cocktail parties there. But at this point, she was older and there weren't parties then. But every time I was in the house, I kept thinking, this is like a 1950s, 1960s cocktail hour, happy hour house. Well, she had passed away, and her niece, who inherited the property, passed away. And then her niece's husband became the landlord, and currently is. And then he married another woman. This other woman is the one who told me this very, very interesting story, and she was far removed from it. But it was such an interesting story, and it proved my intuition was right on. And the story goes that my landlady, Bobby is her name, I think there were about 7 sisters, the O'Connor sisters, and they were touring the Southeast, singing and playing the ukulele. And they would go to different events and shows, and there would be other performers on stage, as they had different acts on different stages. And they were doing the Christmas show at the Ocean Forest Hotel. They were performing their ukulele and singing. But there was another act performing that night, and it was the Rat Pack, the famous Las Vegas Rat Pack. These girls, the O'Connor sisters, invited the Rat Pack to come to their house in North Myrtle Beach after the show. They were all keyed up and full of energy from performing, and they wanted to continue the cocktail party. So they were all invited up to her house. Now, my landlady, Bobby, was very Southern. I consider myself to be very Southern. But she had a very hard time dealing with Black people. She wasn't accustomed to them being out of a certain social setting. But Sammy Davis Jr. was part of the Rat Pack, and he was Black. And as he came into her house that night, she wanted him to know that he was the one and only Black person that she had ever invited in her house. And she didn't use the word Black. That was the way people sometimes spoke in those days. So that often made me wonder how Sammy Davis Jr. felt. I can imagine he laughed about it, but it makes me wonder how he felt about that. It's an interesting story, and it shows my intuition was right. It was a cocktail hour house, and I never knew that they were actually there. I mean, there's nothing more 1960s happy hour cocktail party than the Rat Pack. So what else do I have on my notes here? Let's see. Well, I wanted to talk about some of the old-timer visitors who come into my sign shop over the years, fewer and fewer as time goes by because they're passing on. But I love it so much when any one of them does come in. One person I can talk about was not a visitor at my sign shop. It was someone I worked for. I've got so many notes crowded in here together. I don't want to forget anything. Every delicious little story. When I came to live in Myrtle Beach in 1982, Kitty Davy was very active in helping people get jobs and get started here. It was a hard place to find work here, and so many Baba lovers wanted to come be near the Baba community. The first job she found for me was at the Sea Captain's house, which was the main seafood house in Myrtle Beach at the time. I think it's around 33rd Avenue North on the ocean, and it's only about 3 to 6 blocks south of Yopon Dunes, which is the house that Elizabeth Patterson's father built and where she lived, and where Mayor Baba stayed in the 1950s to recuperate from his automobile accident that had happened in Oklahoma. And I think he had broke his hip and was recuperating. So he stayed at Yopon Dunes. And at this moment, some people in the Baba community, the Sufis of Sufism Reoriented, own that house and are buying a few houses around the neighborhood. So I went to work at Sea Captain's house, and I had heard that when Norina Machabelli moved to Myrtle Beach and was helping Elizabeth with the center, at one point, while Elizabeth was living at the house at Yopon Dunes, Norina was living at the Sea Captain's house. There's an upstairs with bedrooms, and at that time, it was like an inn where you could stay overnight. Travelers could stay there. It may have been a restaurant and an inn, but I heard that she stayed in the bedrooms upstairs. So there I was working at the Sea Captain's house, and I didn't tell the truth when I applied for the job. I said I had been a waiter, but my only waiting experience was, what's it called? Banquet waiting, where everyone eats the same menu. All you do is serve the dish and take it away. You don't take orders. But I was desperate for work. And so my whole week there, while I was working, most of the waitresses were older ladies who had waited tables their whole life. And I was making more tips than them. And they had been doing this for decades. And it was my very first week. And I was bringing in 2 or 3 times as much in tips as they were, because I was giving my customers so much good service. But After the first week, they had to let me go because even though I was giving my customers good service, I was keeping them there all night and I wasn't turning the tables over fast enough. So the owners weren't making enough money. But some stories about that restaurant. I was an architect major. I'm an artist. I love things that most normal people may not even notice. I love design of all sorts. I love fashion, not only fashion in clothing, but fashion in behavior, fashion in architecture. I love the breezes of design that flow through humanity. I'm in heaven appreciating things like that. And not very many people talk about stuff like that. The sea captain's house, every time I went into the kitchen to pick up the food to serve, one thing I noticed was all the shelves were so neat with all the dishes. What would you call it? Like diner type dishes, like heavy dishes and glasses and mugs. But the shelves were all very clean and painted white or ivory and with real enamel. In those days, they didn't have this ugly acrylic paint. It was oil-based enamel paint, and it was shiny, and there were several coats after every few decades. There were more coats of enamel, so there was build-up enamel and shipped off areas. There's a word for that. It skips my mind at the moment. But the texture and the colors of the paint on the shelves was so beautiful, I almost couldn't stand it. The walk-in refrigerators with all the produce and all the wooden shelves and wooden crates full of vegetables. Everything was so elegant. There's a word some people use for it, called it shabby chic. But one funny story is that a customer ordered, there were 4 golfers at the table, and they ordered beer. And I grew up in a dry county in Kentucky. I never saw anyone drink until I went away to college. I didn't know anything about alcohol. I don't care about alcohol. I do love to drink a beer when I go out to eat once or twice a year, and I like to have a bottle of bourbon around to pour on my cake at Christmas. But I'm not aware of drinks. I don't know how they're served or anything. So I panic and I think, I don't know what to put the beer in. And so I found these certain glasses. I put them on the table and I poured their beer into these glasses. And I was walking back and forth, and the customer stopped me and said, "Sir," he said, you poured my beer into a wine glass." And I thought, oh yeah, that's what kind of glass that is. And I thought really quickly, and I said, "Oh, well, that's how we serve it here." And got out of it that way. And then I immediately walked into the kitchen and looked on the shelf and saw all these beer mugs. I went, oh, that's how they're supposed to serve beer. Another incident that happened was I was going back and forth to this table, taking them drinks and water and going back and forth to the kitchen. And an hour went by before I realized I hadn't turned in their order to the cook. An entire hour, and I hadn't even turned it in yet. It wasn't even on the list for the cook yet. And I was happening to keep those customers happy. I was cleaning ashtrays like crazy. I was pouring more water. One other funny story, I had never seen a microwave oven before. They were new then, and I had never been around one. And a customer ordered pecan pie. And I thought, oh, that would be really nice if it was warm. and it would be nice with ice cream on the side. She didn't order the ice cream. I'm fancying it up for her. So I put the pie in the microwave oven and warm it up, and put the vanilla ice cream scoop on the side and bring it to her. And oh my gosh, she was screaming and screaming. We thought she'd have to go to the hospital. She burned out the inside of her mouth because I had heated the pecan pie too much. And it's like syrup inside, and it gets very, very hot. And it damaged her throat. But anyway, so I lose that job after a week, and I'm thinking, well, what else can I do in Myrtle Beach? There's nothing to do but be a waiter. Back in those days, this is 1982. There were no other types of jobs to do. And all I knew from childhood was art. So I thought, I'll work for a sign shop. I'm an artist. I don't know how to hand letter or anything. This was back before signed computers. But I went and got a job with Fanjoy Signs underneath the Waccamaw Bridge. And I learned a lot about sign painting. I felt bad though, because he was paying me $5 an hour and he wasn't doing any work. He was teaching me, but he wasn't doing any of the work. He was giving me all the work. He said I was the most talented person that had ever worked for him. But he was all day in the office with his wife, maybe giving quotes, chatting, making plans, I don't know. Talking about his other business, the hobby shop, I don't know. But he was building a multi-million-dollar house on the Intercoastal Waterway from my labor, and I was only getting $5 an hour. So to keep from feeling bad about that, I bought a notebook, and I told myself every night I will write down 3 things that I learned that day. And then I won't feel bad about being paid so low. And he taught me hand lettering from scratch, which takes years for some people to learn. There's a lot of skill to it. It's very elegant. I enjoyed it very much. I had dreams while I worked for him that he had been my father in a previous incarnation during the Revolutionary War era. And here again, he was teaching me. But there was a dirty aura about his shop and a dirty energy. There was a pet rabbit that was pooping everywhere and urinating everywhere. And this guy's morals were kind of shady sometimes. And I didn't like the dark energy there. But he knew everybody in town. He was the sign painter. And all the old timers knew him, and I got to know a lot of them through him. And one interesting story about that is I found out I only worked there for about a year, and then I moved to North Myrtle Beach and started my own sign shop. I knew enough to do my own by then, which was pretty lucky, really, to have 1-year education for a career. So, and I wanted to be out of his hair and in another town, not competing with him. But an interesting thing I found out toward the end of my days there is that his wife, Mr. Fanjoy's wife, had a brother who lived in Kentucky, where I'm from. And her brother is my aunt's boyfriend and lives with my aunt. Maybe they married at some point, I don't know. But that was pretty amazing. I didn't even know that till the end of my work with them. I loved Mr. Fanjoy's appreciation for Old Myrtle Beach. He ate at the diner downtown every day at lunch. He loved the old timers. He had a gregarious personality. And he loved the old timers the same as I do. So that was fun to get to know them through him. When I start to talk about the photographer, Mr. Fanjoy will come up again. Another person that walked in my shop one day, an elderly lady came in with her daughter who was about my age. This was about 10 or 15 years ago at least. And she was raising peacocks, and she had them in separate pens and wanted me to make a sign with each one's name on their pens. And somehow it came up in conversation. Maybe she saw pictures of Mayor Baba in my shop, but she told me that she had met Mayor Baba. And her daughter had met him too. And she said, have you ever heard of Peach's Corner? And I said, yeah, Peach's Corner is the original hot dog window stand in the downtown Myrtle Beach, right diagonal across from the pavilion and the amusement park. It's right in the middle of everything. It's like the cornerstone of Myrtle Beach, the original landmark, Peach's Corner. And all these windows on the corner. It's on a corner, so there's order windows on both sides, and all these big billboards of hot dogs and different kinds of food painted up there. Peach's Corner, and a Myrtle Beach destination. The pavilion was the heart of Myrtle Beach. It mortified most of us that they tore it down. They wanted to make Myrtle Beach a more upscale resort, and they were going to put in a high-rise tower for millionaires and high-end shopping stores, and immediately the economy crashed and the lot was left vacant for decades. But it grieved all of us that the heart of Myrtle Beach had been ripped out. What could we do? We didn't own it. So I said, yes, I've heard of Peach's Corner. I know that. And she said, well, I'm Peaches. That was my restaurant. And she said, in the 1950s, my house, I lived next door to Elizabeth Patterson at Yopon Dunes, either next door or very close. And so we were neighbors. And when Mayor Baba came to visit Myrtle Beach, and they had an open day for visitors to come meet him, and Elizabeth was going around trying to find people to invite so that there would be people there to meet Mayor Baba. And not many people in America knew about Mayor Baba or had come to see him. I'm sure there were a few dozen, but Elizabeth wanted more, so she was getting locals who knew nothing about him. And she said, so I went to an open day one time to meet Mayor Baba at the Mayor's Spiritual Center. And she said he kissed me on my hand. And the daughter chimed in and said, and he tossed me a piece of candy to eat. So I really enjoy when old timers like that come in the shop, and I can visit with them and reminisce and remember the charm of Myrtle Beach. And it's always intriguing if they met Mayor Baba too. So let's see, who else? I spoke about Marina at Sea Captain's house. I talked about Elizabeth's name, always spoken in reverence. Bobby O'Connor made the cakes. One other note that I have here, let's see. Oh, two more notes before we get to the photographer. One time I was down in Myrtle Beach, I don't know why. Probably I had a sign customer. I used to do commercial signs. Maybe I was drawn there to be with a customer. And it just so happened that I was there across the street in time to see a woman who was on the board at Mayor Center. Many of you would know Ann Conlon. And she was friends with Kitty Davy, the lady who greeted people at the Mayor Center. And Kitty was older then, in her 90s. And they pulled up to the Myrtle Beach Fish Market. It's an old building. I've done a watercolor of it, and I'll show it to you in this video. And it was so much fun for me to see them pull out and being involved in the Myrtle Beach community on a daily, folksy level. Unlike her job at the center where she was greeting people from all over the world and talking about Mary Baba, here she was doing an everyday errand among the folks of little tiny town of Myrtle Beach, going to get fresh seafood for dinner. Anne was driving her. Kitty was going in to help pick out the fish. And I just happened to be there to see that. And I love having that memory. Another story that I have written down in my notes today that I can tell about Old Myrtle Beach. I often wake up singing a song, and I don't know I'm doing it. I just wake up singing, and the song stays with me, and I keep singing it, and I don't know I'm doing it. And then by the time I get to the shower and I'm barely coming awake, I'm standing there in the shower and I'm singing, then I start to realize what I'm doing. And then I listen to the words of the song, and almost always the words of the song are the answer to some question on my mind. A lot of times it'll not be a song, it'll be a word, and the word is usually in Latin or Greek, and I don't know Latin and Greek, and I have to go to the dictionary to look it up, and I've never heard the word before, and I have to look it up to figure out what the message is. So I don't know what spirit it is talking to me, giving me answers to my situations in Latin and Greek. But this one morning I was singing a popular song from a beach band, a black beach band, the Drifters. I was singing Under the Boardwalk. And we used to hear that on the radio, a local radio, a lot here. And so I was singing that song, I couldn't stop. And I go to work, and I had one staff member at the time, and he started whistling it. So he's working at his computer station, and he's whistling it, and I'm singing it. And this is going on all morning long. And then a really big van pulls into my parking lot. Like the van that musicians travel in, a big, nice van. And a black man comes out and walks in and said, I'm thinking about having the name of my band painted all over the sign of this van. And I need to know if it's something you can do, and then I'll go talk to the rest of my band members and get back with you if they like the idea. And I said, oh yeah, that's what we do here. We can hand paint vans. I said, by the way, what's the name of your band? And he said, have you ever heard of the Drifters? And I said, oh my God, I've been singing Under the Boardwalk all morning long, and my employee here is whistling it, and we can't get it out of our minds. And he looked at me and he said, well, you're looking at the man who wrote the song. So that's another fun part of being part of Old Myrtle Beach. Now I'm seeing it's 54 minutes I've been talking, and I only have one more thing I want to talk about, but it's the main thing, and it's the Myrtle Beach photographer whose name I can't say. So I don't think I'll be talking more than another half hour, so maybe this will turn into an hour and a half video. If I go longer than that, then I might break it up into, edit it into 2 videos. We'll see. So This photographer, I think of him as being like the guardian angel of Myrtle Beach. He's the historian of Myrtle Beach. He seems to love Myrtle Beach more than anyone other than me. And I paint and watercolor all the old buildings of Myrtle Beach, and he photographed them in the 50s and 60s. So I feel he's still alive, but as he passes on, I think he will have been the original guardian angel of Myrtle Beach spirit, and then I will take on that job. But he grew up upstate South Carolina, and he and a friend hitchhiked to Myrtle Beach to get a summer job. And I don't know what year. I think it was either in the 50s or 60s. And I was hearing this story originally on television. Twice a year, educational television has especially interesting documentaries that they show during their fundraiser week. And one year they had this documentary on the history of old Myrtle Beach. And the main person they were interviewing all the way through this hour-long documentary was this photographer. And so I got to hear his story, and that's how I got the idea that I wanted to meet him. But he came to Myrtle Beach hitchhiking with a friend as a teenager, and the job that he found was working for a photography studio, and his job was to take the camera down to the beach and photograph people on the beach, run back to the studio, develop the film, and then take it back and sell it to the customer on the beach. And so he had a book I saw from the documentary. He had produced a coffee table art book of his photographs of old Myrtle Beach. And I was at the time photographing all these old houses and going there and watercoloring them on site. And I thought I could really use his book as reference to paint some of the buildings that aren't here anymore. And so I called him up for an appointment. His office was downtown old Myrtle Beach, just half a block away from Elizabeth Patterson's Presbyterian Church. And I told him that I wanted to purchase his book. I wanted to visit his photography studio. I intended to purchase his book. And I wanted to ask him permission to use photographs in his book to do my watercolors of old Myrtle Beach houses. Well, that was the wrong thing to say. He started screaming. He was very irate. He was so angry. He said, all these artists, he said, paint pictures out of my book. And I didn't even get paid for most of those photographs. I took them out of love for Myrtle Beach and love for my art. And I went through hurricanes and I sloshed through muddy swamps to get these pictures. And I worked so hard and slaved to get these pictures, and I didn't even get paid for them. And now these young artists in town do some big oil painting of one of my photographs and sell it for $30,000, $40,000, $60,000. And he was very frustrated with that. Some way, somehow, I got past that block so that I could go see him. I was very much in awe of him and very much wanted to meet him and talk more. So my appointment came and I went to his building. When I walked in the entrance to his studio, there was a table with his book for sale, and there was a couple who were tourists who were in town who had seen his documentary, and they were in awe of him. And I was standing there waiting to speak to him and watching they were in awe. It was like they were meeting the Pope or something. They were so polite and so hushed and listening to him. And I guess that kind of gave me a deeper appreciation for him, to see how much they were appreciating him. Then when they left, it was my turn to talk with him. And I had seen that in the front of his book, he had a photograph of Elizabeth Patterson at Mayor Spiritual Center. And I was really impressed that he dedicated a whole page to her early in the book, almost like a dedication. And I mentioned that I knew someone in common, that I had met her, and that I was a member of the Baba community. Then he was so funny. His ears perked up and he looked around like he was really scared that somebody might be listening to us. There was no one in the building but us. He ran to the door and he looked outside the door both ways, and he locked the door and he pulled the shades. And he said, "You got to be careful who you talk about the Baba around here." And I could tell that he felt friendly towards Mayor Baba, but he was afraid for locals to know anything about that. So he said, "You got to be careful when you talk about the Baba around here." And then, make sure I'm not leaving anything out. We got involved in our conversation. We got to be very good friends. We talked for about an hour. He signed a book for me in very loving ways. I showed him a book of my watercolors. But then he told me some stories about Mayor Baba and that he had met Mayor Baba. And I said, "Mayor Baba?" And he said, yes, I met the Baba. I said, "Jack, do you know Baba is the reincarnation of Jesus?" "Oh, I know, the avatar, all that I know." And I said, "Jack, do you know Jesus came all the way across the Atlantic Ocean, 2,000 years after his life, came all the way across the Atlantic Ocean and came and met you?" I said, that is so impressive. He came all those miles from India to meet you. And yes, the avatar, yes. So here was his story about how he met who he calls the Baba. He was telling me that at the time, the photography studio where he was working was sharing a building. Upstairs in the back was his photography studio where he was a staff member, and downstairs in the front was a shell shop, gifts for tourists and shells. And it was right next door to the Presbyterian church that Elizabeth went to every Sunday. And so every Sunday after church, Elizabeth would bring her brownie camera. I just think it's so amusing that Elizabeth, I don't know how wealthy she was, but I assume her family, her father, were multimillionaires, very wealthy, traveled around the world. But she had this humble little brownie camera, the cheapest, poorest camera an American could own at that time. But evidently, she didn't know how to load the film. So every Sunday after church, she would bring it to him, I almost said his name, and ask him to unload the film for her and develop it and put a new roll in for her to use for the week. And she did this every Sunday after church. And then one Sunday, he heard all this commotion out front in the shell shop, and all the sales clerks were whispering and gossiping and all in a big uproar. And he went to see what they were so upset about. And they pointed out on the sidewalk, Elizabeth Patterson was standing there with Mayor Baba, and they were getting ready to come in. And he said that the gossip in Myrtle Beach at the time was that Elizabeth Patterson was what they called shacked up with Mayor Baba at her house, that they were having sex outside of marriage, and that he was her exotic boyfriend from India. And in the 1950s, this was really, really bad and something to gossip about. So they were all saying she's getting ready to come in here with that lover of hers from India. So sure enough, they came in, and he said Baba was all wrapped up in a white sheet. And we who know Baba know that he wore a white sadra, about 3/4 length down his leg, and white pajama pants. And he didn't wrap himself up in a sheet, but that's what Jack saw. He saw Baba wrapped up in a sheet. And he said they came all the way through the shop, and they came back to his workspace to meet him, to meet the photographer. And Elizabeth Patterson stood there and said, so-and-so, this is Baba. Baba, this is so-and-so. Maybe they shook hands, I don't know. But he may have told me something about his impression of Baba, I don't remember. But the funny thing was he always called Mayor Baba the Baba. So that was the time he met the Baba. So then he tells me that he did all of Elizabeth's professional photography, and for Jane Haynes and her family and all their family portraits. And that Elizabeth always had him come up whenever there's an event at the Mayor Spiritual Center. And he was on call so much that he actually had his own key to the gate of the center. I imagine since then the lock has been changed over the years, but he showed me the key. He still had a key to the Mayor Spiritual Center. And then he said, wait, he said, I have something to show you. He went behind his counter, and there were these black curtains because his darkroom was back there. And he came back out, and on the counter, he set a big metal safe deposit box like you would find in the bank. It was a bank safe deposit box. And he opened it up, and he showed me all these photographs that he had of Mayor Baba that no one's ever seen. And all these private photographs of Elizabeth and Jane and their family. And then he said, I've never shown this to anyone. You're the only person who knows about this. He said, even my wife and my daughters don't know about this. And I'm thinking, well, when he dies, his family might not know what these are and the value of these. So I need to make sure to tell the people at the Mayor's Center about this box, because these things are very valuable to the Mayor Baba community. That was several years ago, and I honestly don't remember if I told anyone. At the time, Dot Lesnick was in charge of archives at the center. I may have told her, or I may have told Wendy Connor. I'm friends with her. I'm not sure if I did. I probably need to call Wendy and make sure. I checked today before telling the story. Still living or not? He is. He just posted on Facebook a few days ago, so he's living. But someone from the center needs to have a connection with him about that box before he passes away. So then I'm looking through the box. He's letting me rummage through it, and there's this plastic sleeve with a typed letter in it, being kept in archival condition. And I'm looking at it, and before I start to read the words, I'm thinking, I know this typewriter. I know this typewriter. I know how it goes up and down with the keys. And I know that there's red every once in a while, and there's black, and then there's red. There's only one person that I know that types like that and who uses that much red along with the black ink. There's a lot of red ribbon ink there. And I'm thinking, I know. I can't believe this. I don't believe it's here. but I know what typewriter printed this. And I flip it over and see the signature, and sure enough, it's Mayor Baba's sister, Monty, who was Baba's correspondent at the time. And she had written, there may have been more than one, but this one was at least 2 full pages, front and back. The paper was beginning to yellow. Monty's signature was there. And I recognized all this because I used to be the person in charge of donating charity from the Kentucky Baba group to India when Monty was alive. And that's how I got to be good friends with Monty. Every month I would write her, I would use the chance to send the money as an excuse to chat with her, and we got to be friends through letters. And so I saw a lot of postcards and letters and things typed with that typewriter. And that was a very magical day for me. No one else in the world knew what I had just experienced, what history I had just uncovered. No one else in the whole world. I was walking 2 or 3 feet off the ground that whole time as I went back home that evening. He also told me the story about the old train depot next door to his photo studio. He said one day he left work and there were bulldozers getting ready to tear the train depot down. And he jumped up on the deck of the train depot and said, "Stop, stop." He said, "I own this building. I don't give you permission to do this." Well, that wasn't true. He didn't own the building, but he wanted to buy time. So then he went to the city council and asked them to refurbish this building and keep it as a historic building. There's almost no historic buildings left in Myrtle Beach. They tear them down as fast as they possibly can. And the city council said, "Very well, we allow it, but you have to be the one to raise the money, not us. We're not going to do that." So sure enough, he raised the money. It became beautifully restored. It's early part of Myrtle Beach. There were no tourists here before they built the train track here from Conway. And Elizabeth Patterson's father built the first 12 houses for beachgoers on the beach. They were all exactly alike in a row. I've done several paintings of them. There's one on the wall right there, but I don't know how to turn that camera. So I'll show it in the editing. Let me see, what else? While I was talking with him, it turns up that he was really good friends with Mr. Fanjoy, my sign teacher. And one time he was having a hard time making a living. So he had this crazy idea. He went to South America and started a fish farm with his family. And that didn't work out either. So he came back as a poor photographer to Myrtle Beach. And my boss, Ed Fanjoy, surprised him one day. He came to work and there was a brand new big sign on the front of his building for his business that Mr. Fanjoy had done as a gift for him and surprised him. Mr. Fanjoy loved to do things like that. He did give me permission to use his photographs for my watercolors. I've never showed them to him. Today, when I discovered him on Facebook, I thought maybe I'll send him some of the paintings that I've done from the photographs. But I remember how upset he was with people making money from his photographs that he never made. So I thought, well, I don't want to get him all upset again, so I didn't do it. Let's see. Did I leave anything out? No, it looks like everything written in my notes I've said. And we didn't go too long over. It's an hour and 14 minutes. So I wish I could convey how much I love Old Myrtle Beach and why. maybe I'll spend some time and write a few paragraphs about that sometime. I am painting many of the older Myrtle Beach houses before they get torn down, and some I'm painting from old photographs. And I'm thinking they would make a beautiful coffee table book someday. I think people who move here in the future and people who own vacation homes here would love to have this book on their coffee table. It would cost way more money than I can afford at this time. Maybe I can start out with a paperback edition. I think they would sell well. They could sell at every cash register in town, every restaurant, every t-shirt shop. But being a hardbound art book, they would have to be expensive. But in that book, maybe I can write more about the things that I love so much about Myrtle Beach, along with my paintings. In the meantime, you guys can see my watercolors of old Myrtle Beach. I have a website, www.cedarartstudio.com. Under my landscapes, I use the painting name of Cedar. Under my Baba paintings, I use the painting name of Wodin. Under my landscapes, Cedar. I love cedar trees since I was a kid. So if you would like to see the watercolors of old Myrtle Beach, www.cedar, C-E-D-A-R, artstudio.com. Well, I guess that's all I can think of for now. I hope you guys enjoyed it. They're tagged on to the end of this video. I will, as usual, have the featured painting of the evening, and then after that, a little 10-minute segment describing the Daddy God Art Museum that I plan to build someday. You may have, if you've seen my other videos, you may have already seen that. If not, then you may want to stick around that extra 10 minutes at the end to hear about the plans for the Daddy God Art Museum. And I thank you so much for listening. I've enjoyed telling you these stories, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Tonight's featured video is Pirate Dreams. It is a Rembrandt pastel chalk on velvety, smooth German sandpaper. This sandpaper is so smooth it feels like velvet cloth. Working on it with very fine, expensive Rembrandt pastel chalks is like working with butter on velvet. It's very delightful. I've done it for many years. This original is about 40 inches by 60 inches. It has Mayor Baba watching over a little boy as he's dreaming about pirates at his Myrtle Beach beach house. The original is already sold, but prints are available in a wide range of sizes and prices on my website, which is daddygodstudio.com. daddygodstudio.com. This print is there along with hundreds of others that you can shop from. Thank you. Hello, my name is Steve Jameson. The brush and pen name of Wodin I use for my paintings and stories of my spiritual master, Meher Baba. I hope you enjoyed the video presentation. I plan to create many more, so come back from time to time to hear more true life stories of Meher Baba. I also plan to interview others who have had personal Baba experiences and people who follow other spiritual masters such as Jesus, Muhammad, and Buddha. I would like to take this time to give you more information on my work. I have a website entitled daddygodartstudio.com. On this website, you can find art prints of my Meher Baba paintings in a very wide range of sizes and prices. There are greeting cards available, and my short story books and art books can be purchased there. I also want to tell you about the planned Daddy God Art Museum. I'm very excited about this project. My main and biggest project for the rest of my life is to build this Daddy God Art Museum to house all my paintings of Meher Baba after I pass on. Here I want to show you some architectural renderings of the planned museum. You can see the main entrance hall that will greet visitors when they first arrive. Here is the art studio where I can paint, edit videos, work on book publishing, and my staff of animators can create. Here's the main common area, a living room-like area, the upper mezzanine with all the paintings of Meher Baba on the walls, the veranda where people can enjoy the outdoors, kitchen, and dining area. The architectural plan is for a traditional South Carolina low-country style of a large home that will house the paintings and can be used for public gatherings and possibly even overnight stays. You see, I was an architect major in college. I love architecture, so I plan to enjoy many years designing and building this museum. My vision for the Daddy God Art Museum is for future visitors and pilgrims to this area of the South Carolina coast in the next few hundred years to have a place to stop for a couple of hours to refresh and be inspired by paintings of Meher Baba. We now have 4 places in this area that attract those interested in learning more about Meher Baba. Foremost, we have the Meher Spiritual Center, founded for Meher Baba, where people can stay on retreat and attend programs of movies and speakers on Meher Baba. This center was dedicated and built for Meher Baba, who visited it 3 times in the 1950s. Right across the street from the center is a bookstore selling all books regarding Meher Baba. About 45 minutes south of the center, there's the world-famous Brookgreen Sculpture and Horticulture Gardens, where people can walk in the path of Meher Baba, who visited there one day himself. There is Yaupon Dunes. This is the house where Meher Baba stayed for some time while he was recuperating from a car accident. He had a painful car accident in America that he said was his modern-day crucifixion for this incarnation. Finally, the ultimate destination, or the alternate destination, would be the dream of where the Daddy God Art Museum would be situated south of Meher Center on the road to Charleston. It would be situated with the ocean front on one side and backed by the beautiful local salt marshes on the other. Anyone wanting to visit historic Charleston for the day can stop at the museum for a couple of hours on the drive down. Here I want to show you a few recent paintings that I have created for the museum. I think I have about 30 done so far, but I plan many dozens more. These are very elaborate and time-consuming paintings done with oil on canvas in a very large format size of 5 foot by 7 foot. So you can see these are too big for private homes. These paintings are currently being created and housed at my studio, which is just 15 minutes north of Meher Center in North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I would like to extend an open invitation to anyone visiting the area to stop by my studio for a short visit, for a cup of chai, and to see the current artwork. Visiting hours are from noon to 6 p.m., and I'm here 7 days a week. Also, here you can see a few of my true life short story books about Meher Baba. These books have been printed and published and are available on Amazon. I'm very excited to tell you about another huge project I'm working on in my studio. I'm very excited about this one, and I think you will be too. With the help of a few animators, I am working on full feature film-length Walt Disney style animated movies of Meher Baba done in my Wodin style of depicting his image. Currently, we are creating a 5-minute presentation sample of what the full-length movie might look like. We plan to use this mini presentation to show our proposed film to the public when we are asking for financial donations to pay the animators. Animation is a very labor-intensive and time-consuming endeavor, and the animation staff must be paid in order to live and be able to afford to work on this project. Finally, I would like to invite anyone who feels inclined to support the vision of the Daddy God Art Museum, as well as the animated movies, to donate financially. It will take a few $1,000,000 in my estimation to build this museum as I envision it, and to finance its operation and maintenance for the next few hundred years. I would also like to suggest that people leave donations for the museum in their will. Information on how you can donate is provided in the section below this video. You can send donations now to my PayPal account, which is wodinart@aol.com. That's WODINART@AOL.com. From time to time, I might set up GoFundMe style accounts where you can donate, and eventually I will also create a tax-exempt foundation where you can make larger donations that will be tax-free. Thank you so much for watching this video. I apologize for the sound of all the motorcycles out here. It's Bike Week in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, which happens every May and September, I think, and it gets very loud here then. And also my parrot over here keeps beeping in once in a while. So I apologize for the noise. I hope you'll return in the future to see more videos that I intend to create telling more true life, real adventures with Mayor Baba that the world has yet to hear. So, bye-bye for now. See you later.